Hello, everyone. This is Alex Frad. Welcome to the release of Layers of Reality. Now, what is this? Well, let me start from the beginning. Many years ago, I decided that I will pursue being an artist. And the goal has been to become an independent artist. So I say that not as a superficial thing, because it's actually at the core of everything that I have been doing and everything that I will be doing. And this thing, being a truly independent artist, is something quite tricky to accomplish. In fact, it might even seem impossible at times. However, I do believe that for many reasons it's completely worth it. And to me, this aspect of independence and freedom starts right there with the medium that you use to express your work. So, going back a little more, as a teenager, I grew up falling in love with music, and it became my first medium. At the same time, growing up with science fiction and fantasy from books and movies and video games and anywhere I could find them, they were such a powerful influence and a source of discovery and sometimes of escape too. They filled me with visions and ideas and an incredible desire to tell stories. And I wanted to put these stories into words and images and sounds and just be able to express the infinite number of experiences that these worlds could create. So eventually I went for other mediums too. And I worked for a bunch of years in developing a way of conveying these ideas and giving them a particular shape. So putting these things together, creating a compelling story that was able to integrate and combine all these different mediums and influences was a long dream that I kept stored in a corner of my heart for quite a while. Then, around 2018, I finally decided that I will transform that dream into a reality. And well, it's the end of 24 now, so that means that it took me a little bit to get there. And all throughout this process, I have intentionally gone against the common sense or common advice in the current landscape of social media and marketing and excessive exposure that you as a creator are expected to perform. And I did that intentionally. I haven't shared anything at all about this work up until now, when I'm releasing the whole thing at the same time in all the platforms that are relevant for this. And the meaning of that is that I do believe that we have an unhealthy relationship at the moment with all these social platforms and all these mediums. And as an artist, I do believe that at least some of us should be able to step outside of the current discourse in the culture and go into our chartered territory and in silence be able to gather the kind of voice that deserves a particular artistic expression. And it's just not possible to do that if you are already plugged in and hooked into the same arguments and same discussion that everybody else in social media trapped by. So there's a lot more to say about that, but let's leave it aside for a moment and let me just lay out my offering to you. What you will see in a second is what I call the overture for Layers of Reality. And it serves as a teaser for the project as a whole and describing both the book and the music album. And after that, I will share more details about it. But let's say this is the first step of a journey, is the very beginning of this journey in which I hope a few of you out there are willing to join me on it. So let's give it a look. Here it goes. Okay, so let me now describe a little bit what the whole thing is about. So there's two separate products, although they are connected by the same narrative. The book is all the developments, all the story, and it's a hybrid, as a novel, it's a hybrid of sci-fi and fantasy. You're going to find tropes that belong to these genres, but I like to play with them, and I take some liberties in exploring different paths that are not necessarily common or trivial, because that's very related to this aspect of freedom that I mentioned at the beginning. And the music album is instrumental music, heavily inspired by the kind of soundtracks that you will find in movies or video games. And so the sound signature, let's say, is very connected to that influence. And so they are separated products, but at the end, you could say that there's just two sides of the same coin, and one tells the story in full detail, laying out all the developments, and the other is its essence, its inspiration in a much more abstract way through the music without words. And so it's overall 7 tracks, and each track is connected to different chapters in the book, and a lot of the influences and the type of mood of each track is also deeply associated with the developments of that part of the book. And the first one is called Hello World. Hello World is pretty much a nod to my background in software development, which is where I have made my career all this time. And there is a very common thing, it's an ancient practice in software, that the very first program that you write when you are learning a language or when you're learning a new tool is a little hello world program. This is something that everybody knows. And given that this is my first book, I wanted to play with that a little bit and put it somewhere in its creation too. But there's also an aspect of it because the main character in the story, Darren, he's going through a very big brainwashing event where all his memories and all his personality is being shaped by this dystopian system in which he lives. So in a quite literal way, he is also being introduced to his world, and so there's a hello world moment for himself in the story. And as the story progresses, we learn about this dystopian kind of high-tech, low-life style, which is very common in these kinds of stories. And that's how we enter into the second track, which is called the Globenek. And the Globenek is the version of a sort of internet in this parallel universe. And we there see how this society works, and its totalitarian systems, and how people are used in this particular setting. And the Globenek is a very fast-paced track, and it has this feeling of cyber influences, and it's one of the fastest in terms of mood and tempo of the whole album. And then from Globenek, the third track, we transition into the more esoteric aspects of the story, and that is Crossing Dimensions. That's it, the name of the third. And Crossing Dimensions, as the title suggests, is right there at the threshold in which our character lives a very traumatic and transcendental experience and learns about there are other dimensions in this universe and how he can interact with those things that are not perceivable in your common senses. And so this track is a little bit more experimental, and it has a different song structure, playing with the time signature and playing with the effects, sort of to connect and to inspire that feeling of transformation and discovery into a completely different side of reality. And from there we move from there into the fourth track, which is there is always a master. And there is a common arc in most stories, and it has been talked about a lot, and that is the hero's journey. And at some point during that journey, you always find this mentor figure or this entity or person who serves as a sort of master or as a teacher, and that's where you learn to interact with this new world that you discover and all the obstacles and challenges in your way, and that's where you undergone a deep transformation internally. And so playing a little bit with that archetype, this fourth theme plays with this, and in the book is also the exploration of these other dimensions and how Dairon discovers a figure that will serve as a mentor in his path. So from there we move into the fifth track, which is one of the longest of the album, and ironically is one of the parts of the book that is explored the least, because it's going to be more relevant in the coming episodes in the next books. And the fifth track is called The Naturalists. And the Naturalists are a part of the planet that decided to separate from the world of technology and from all the changes and profound structural existence that represented technology as it evolved more and more in the story. So a percentage of humanity just went their own way, and they moved into a region of the planet that was deeply covered by a mysterious sort of protection, and it's mostly they are known as the naturalists because they decided to embrace the wild side and a deeper connection to nature, untouched, and just diverge from the world of the technological society. And from there we move into the sixth track, which is Evil Spirit. And Evil Spirit is supposed to be the creepy side of the story, as a musical form is also the more unsettling of the themes, and this explores the shadow element, and it's connected to in particular one of the characters of the story who is intentionally going through the darkest possible path that they found in the search of, well, things that I don't want to give spoilers about. It's right there at the core of what the whole story is going to be eventually. So you're going to have to read it. But Evil Spirit, as the name says, is the darkest side, both in the story and in the album, in terms of the thematic components and how it sounds and how it feels. And so right there we go into the final track, the seventh track, which is the longest piece of the whole set, and it's called Burnt Tears. Burnt Tears starts differently than all the others. It's a slow piano which develops some of the thematic elements that were presented all throughout the album, but this is in a much more simple, raw form. And then it evolves into the other parts of the theme to finally connect with the structure as it was in the first track. So the thing goes eventually full circle, and we end right at the start. So the album completes in a symmetrical way, we could say. And that is the album. Now, talking in particular about the book, and in terms of the story, I really wouldn't want to give much details about that, because to me, part of the magic of the artistic creation itself is to keep it in a realm beyond what the author, the person who originated it, has to say. It's, if I do my work right to whatever extent I'm capable of, the work itself transcends me. And anything that I might say, because of my values and my knowledge and my experience in life as a person, will be secondary to the perception that the person who reads the story feels and how they experience it. So there's a magical element that I fully believe on, and giving details about where the story comes from, or the characters of the scenes, or the whole development of it, it's breaking in a way that magical element. However, I would like to share a little bit about the process in general, and this aspect that authors face today of deciding whether they are going to go in the traditional path, like in publishing, or a self-publishing path, which they both have. They both have their pros and cons, but for a new author, to me, when I was doing this research, it was extremely obvious that the way to go was self-publishing. Many reasons, like the most clear one is that if you don't have contacts in the industry, if you don't have some kind of leverage, it's almost impossible to have somebody from a particular publishing house that is going to want to work with your project. And so you are basically having to face this filter for who knows how long before you are given the chance to show your work. And to me, that was unnecessary today with all these platforms and the resources that we have to connect directly with the readers, and just they decide if your work has a chance or not. And there's also the aspect, as I've been saying, which is one of the most important things for me, and is being able to keep your creative freedom. And having, in my case, I wanted to have full control over the whole creation of it, including the cover art, which is connected to the animation work and to the music and to all the aspects of the project and things like that, things like the editing. I went through a very particular process of editing with specialized people, but also with open-minded people who will not be trapped by the particular genre or subgenre because you're supposed to fit a given market. And I just don't care about any of those things, and I only care about creating a good story that feels connected to what I wanted to express. And the way to go and to achieve all these things in full extent is self-publishing, in my opinion. In the future, if more opportunities come, of course, that could be considered, but that was the right stage. And so giving a chance to self-published work is a good thing that should be promoted more out there. I believe. However, there's this challenge as well of presenting a multidisciplinary work, and this aspect of being a polymath and working on more than one discipline at once is another tricky subject. It's a tricky subject because this area of polymaths is not really very well seen today. We live in a highly specialized and reductionistic world, and you're supposed to take on a specialty and then within that specialty dive deep on it and just have your job and dedicate to that. And when somebody wants to go outside of those boundaries, there's usually some kind of resistance. And to do a project that is multidisciplinary in nature, you pretty much have to be willing to just be on your own, at least for a while, until others share your vision and might be willing to help you with it. And I believe that I am in that stage at the moment. Being a multidisciplinary artist or whatever it is that you do is definitely a trade-off, because as someone who has a broader vision, to me, it's just impossible not to do it, because I want to participate in various stages of the process and put my vision as an artist on those different disciplines. And just being locked in a box, it's completely against the way my mind works. It's pretty much at the core of it, the desire to be in several places and share a particular vision in them and learn from that element as well. And so the reductionistic mindset that it's permeated in most areas of society, it's like a challenge to deal with. And also, there is a more pragmatic fact that I will never really be a specific expert on any of these subjects. As a writer, I might not be as good as I could be if I only dedicated to writing. The same with music composition and the same with the visual work. There is always a trade-off and a price that you have to pay, whatever path you take, either of specialization or being more of a generalist. And finally, one more aspect that I wanted to share here in this making of video is, now that everything is being released and I'm making the work available in all the different platforms, it comes the subject of, well, what happens next? This is the first episode, right? Layers of Reality is episode 1 of what I call the Multiverse Clan, which is the whole set of the 3 episodes. There's going to be 3 overall. And when the next 2 are coming, I really cannot say, because the production of these things is a complicated effort, and I cannot foresee how it will become a reality. But overall, as a artistic vision, it's going to be 3 episodes, and the complete arc is going to close like this to make sure that there's no space for other extensions of the story, which is something that I just hate when people try to squeeze a story beyond its ending just because it's commercially interesting to do it. And there's going to be 3 episodes overall, and perhaps the aspect of how much I share in social media and so on is also a work in progress, a development that I need to discover. What is the balance between my extreme of not wanting to share anything and the extreme that is demanded of creators today of just putting things on a daily basis just to make sure that people are seeing you. And to me, that is completely absurd, and it is against any values that I might have as an artist. So what is the balance? I don't know. I need to discover that as this new stage begins and I release the work, make it public. But perhaps the most important thing is that not being a marketer, but instead just sharing it with people who might be interested on it, and then allow the people themselves, if they like the work, to share it. So if you like either the music or the writing, you like the story, to share it with others, then that becomes a true testament of something that is appreciated, versus what is mostly encouraged today, that is that you become a salesperson, and the one who is more skilled in their sales strategy is the one who wins. Well, I won't play that game. So that means that beyond the things that I will share now that I'm releasing the projects, there won't be a lot more for a while, perhaps for a long while, until the next thing is ready, and then I share it again. But we will see. That's something that will be developed as the next year comes by, and new unforeseen stuff will be presented my way. So thank you very much for listening. It has been a really wonderful experience to work on this, and this is the culmination of more than 5 years of work, and it's really exciting to see what is going to happen with this in the future, and give it a chance. So either the music or the book or both, however you prefer to consume it. Thank you very much for your time and your attention, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.